Hey, what's up, you guys? My name is Grace Lauren Taylor, and you are listening to episode 38 of the Trauma Dump Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Here at the Trauma Dump Podcast, we seek to answer the question, what is mental health? How do I take care of my own, and how do I support others? This week, we will be discussing the topic of narcissistic mothers with Dakotah. You can go follow Dakotah over on TikTok, Instagram, all the socials. It's at Sit Down with Dakotah. Make sure you go check him out, support him for being on this podcast, and show him some love. And remember, if you'd like to share on the podcast, please message us in our Discord in the podcast participants channel along with your unique experiences, and we will match you to the right episode. And just a quick disclaimer before we start, I am not a licensed health professional. This podcast only seeks to create community and further understanding of these topics that are so often overlooked and extremely misunderstood. If you or a loved one are in need of medical professional help, we have so many different resources in our description. The topics discussed here are for a mature audience, so viewer discretion is always advised. Okay. So, we've talked about narcissism on this channel before, but a little refresher for people who are just tuning in. Hello, I'm Grace. Nice to meet you. Narcissistic personality disorder is a mental health condition in which people have unreasonably high sense of their own importance. They need and seek too much attention and want people to admire them. People with this disorder may lack the ability to understand or even care about the feelings of others. But behind this mask of extreme confidence is actually a person who's extremely insecure. They are not sure of their self-worth and are easily upset by the slightest criticism. A narcissistic personality disorder causes problems in many areas of life, such as relationships, work, school, financial matters, and especially within the family. People with narcissistic personality disorder are generally unhappy and often disappointed when they're not given special favors or admiration that they believe they deserve. They may find that their relationships are troubled and really unfulfilling, and other people may not enjoy being around them. So, treatment for narcissistic personality disorder centers around talk therapy, which is called psychotherapy. Narcissistic personality disorder affects more males than females, but today we're going to be talking about how narcissistic personality disorder affects mothers in general. So, being raised by a narcissistic mother, I myself was raised by a narcissistic mother, and so was Dakotah. Now, Dakotah's platform really currently revolves around him sitting down with his mother and talking about his life with his mother from his perspective, and then her talking about it from her perspective. And it's really eye-opening. I don't want to ever bash anyone who has the diagnosis of narcissism because it is a diagnosis. It is a mental health condition. And even though it is a mental health condition, people that are around others that have narcissism can be abused by the people who have narcissism. And that is often called narcissistic abuse. And today we're going to be discussing how narcissistic abuse from mothers towards their children impacts them. So, what is narcissistic abuse? The term describes an emotional abuse that comes from a person with NPD, which is narcissistic personality disorder. People with NPD have low empathy and see others as beneath them, especially, mother to children dynamic, which can lead to very harmful, toxic, and abusive behaviors. Narcissistic abuse can be really, really hard to endure. If you are someone who has a narcissistic parent or someone in your life that has some semblance of authority and they have narcissism, It's not great. People with NPD may use insults, threats, accusations to manipulate you into doing what they want. Learning about narcissistic abuse and talking with an online therapist or an in person provider can really help you cope. The sooner we have a better understanding of what narcissism is and the signs that we are getting abused, the sooner we can begin healing for the emotional abuse from someone with NPD. One of the most common traits of someone with NPD is the constant need for admiration. And over time, narcissistic behavior can really isolate a victim and damage their confidence. It's tactics like these that allow someone with NPD to control their victim and gain more power in an abusive relationship. Narcissistic characteristics can include volatile behavior, lack of empathy, and aggression. They can include gaslighting, constant criticism, humiliation, and coercion. And it's really important to recognize that abuse is never, ever the fault of the abused or the victim, but it's always the responsibility of the abuser, whether they recognize it or not. It's still their responsibility. Your words matter. What you say to people matters. And whether or not you recognize what you're saying hurts them doesn't negate the fact that it actually does hurt them. Suicidal thoughts and behavior are very common with people who have endured emotional abuse of any kind. If you think you may hurt yourself or attempt suicide, please get help right away. Please call 911 if you're in the US or in any bordering country, even the UK. You can call 911 and be routed to your local emergency number. Or if you're in the US, call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. They are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or use the Lifeline chat. The links are in the description. Services are free and always confidential. You are worth the effort it takes to get better. Now let's get into this episode, learning about what narcissistic abuse looks like when it comes from your mama. Hello, Dakotah.
Hello, Grace. How are you?
Again, I'm alive. I'm living. I'm trying. I'm trying the best that I can, dude. I'm
That's important.
home. I'm home with 4 pets, and they're crazy.
Dogs, cats, something
I
else.
have 2 dogs and 2 cats.
Love it. Love it. Well, that is awesome. I have one dog myself. My mom has two, and we're together in the same home. So there's three. They run around and go bananas. So I can only imagine being one person with four.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're insane. So I just moved to a duplex from an apartment complex, and I'm very happy for the move. But my cats are not happy, and so I've decided to start peeing on literally everything: the
No.
wall, our couch, the beanbag, the floor pillows,
Oh
the
no.
rugs. I've had to throw out 3 different rugs because I thought, oh, I'll just wash them first and just put them back. Nope, they peed on them again. Like, why?
Well, I'm glad we could find time to convene, and hopefully the cats calm down and are not too stressful.
Exactly. So, before we get into this interview, I just want to address your pronouns.
Yes. For me, it's he, him, his.
Okay, I am they, them.
Awesome.
Um, Before we start this interview, I just need to get your consent for the interview. Are you comfortable discussing your personal experiences?
Yes, I am.
Okay, make sure I'm not crossing any of your boundaries, respecting your experiences. Please feel free to interrupt me at any time, or you'd be like, Grace, chill. We don't need to talk about that.
Thank you,
Uh,
Grace. I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. My priority is to make sure that you feel safe at all times because talking about, mental health can be a little touchy for some people. So I just want to make sure you feel okay.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
Okay, so my first question is, have you experienced narcissistic abuse?
Yeah. I have, and I don't think I originally like categorized it as such because I think what happens is it's very easy to when you live with somebody who is like this, it's very easy to kind of think that it's normal. And I think not, I'm turning 30 actually at the end of this month on March 30th. And I don't think until I was deep into 29 that I even realized that this was a thing. So have certainly lived with narcissistic abuse, but it's not something I really recognized as such until very recently. Is what I'll say.
Okay. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you. I'm excited. Dirty 30, as they
Mm,
say.
exactly. My goodness. I mean, your episode will come out the day after your birthday.
Will it will? I'm excited for that.
Ooh, little birthday present. Oh, that's
Yes.
exciting. Oh, I love birthdays. I don't know why. I just like speaking of narcissistic abuse, my mother is diagnosed as a narcissist.
Mm,
Yeah. The only celebration that I ever really had growing up was birthdays. And she would go all out, balls to the walls for the birthday. It was intense. She would throw these massive parties, invite like a bunch of people that I didn't know.
mm.
And it was like very performative, very, very performative. They would always have themes. Like for the first 10 years of my life, each and every birthday was themed after a Disney princess. And when I tell you this woman went out all out, she spent thousands and thousands of dollars on these birthday parties. Everybody got like a really big goodie bag. So I don't know, it was like I was raised that on my birthday, it wasn't about me getting presents, but giving presents to people on my birthday. So even to this day, whenever it's like either my birthday or someone else's birthday, I get so excited because I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get them this and I'm gonna get them this. And then my fiance has been telling me, he's like, okay, it's your birthday. It's
Yeah, hard to remember.
yeah, because my last birthday, I was so excited to have a party and I was so excited to get all these goodie bag things. He's like, Grace, it's your birthday. I was like, but I want people to enjoy being here. He's like, well, they'd enjoy being here because they're with you, not because you're gonna give them things.
Mm,
I don't know. But yeah, being raised by a mother with narcissism, like you were saying earlier, it's like it's all you know until you see something else and you
please
think
no.
it's normal.
Absolutely. And I think for me, what I think also happens is that people who have this, um, at least I guess I'll speak in my experience. I think a lot of my family saw some of this stuff happening over time, but I think it was so normalized that this was happening, and that the patterns of abuse were happening that nobody really said anything about it. And so for me, it actually, funny enough, I started doing TikTok, and all of a sudden, I kind of started realizing this was really not normal, and it kind of opened, kind of Pandora's box for me. But before that, I had really no language around it and really didn't. I always felt like it was kind of, I was consistently gaslit by my mom, but also people around us in our immediate family that, I was the problem, or like, because this is my mom, I should just deal with whatever is given to me. Right. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. And to your point about how your accomplishments kind of don't become your own, I think in so many ways, I kind of clung to things that look really good on the surface, a lot of scholastic achievements. So I went to Brown for undergrad. I went to Harvard Business School. I started working on Wall Street. I did all these things. But for me, it came from a place of like always trying to create a space for myself financially where I could feel autonomy and feel safe, like I didn't, when I was home when I was younger. And so a lot of the classic things that people think of as like very good parenting. Oh my God, you raised the kid who went to Harvard. Oh my God, you raised the kid who wants to come. Oh my God, it really is a trauma response for me. And so it's kind of triggering because people around me will also say, well, but your mom raised you and you went off to do this or you went off to do that. And it's like these are kind of like war battle scars to me. And to other people, they seem like these beautiful things that are worthy of celebration for not just me, but also my mom. And it's a really like kind of screwed up um, duality.
I couldn't relate more. Couldn't relate more. Oh my gosh. Oh, because I've been in performing arts my entire life.
Mm,
Entire life since I was 3 years old performing professionally. My mom was like, "Oh, she's good at something. Let me make money from it."
mm,
So, um, I was in performance choir. I've been acting. I have 2 degrees in acting, and
mm,
it was always both of my parents were like, "Well, we want you to be better than everybody else up on that stage. You're gonna have to memorize your lines within a week of getting your script." Like it was very drilled into me, and also school. But whenever, I don't know, like you were saying, like your own achievements are seen as your parents' achievements. Whenever I was doing what she thought was poorly in school, she would
Mm,
transfer me to a whole nother school. So in total, I went to 14 different schools growing up, from elementary to high school, 14 different schools. Because whenever I started to struggle in anything, my mom was like, "Oop, new school."
mm.
And
Wow.
it was very hard because I never had friends. Like, I'm very good at making friends, but I never had the ability to keep them
Mhm.
because I never moved physically, like my house, but I was always moving schools. And as a kid, if you're their kids are like fishbowl people. If you're not within their fishbowl, they
Mm,
don't know you exist. And it was very frustrating for me. Now, as an adult, I don't have any lasting friendships.
mm.
And so I'm making friends now as an adult, but there's like no strong foundation. And I'm getting married next year. And
Congratulations.
I was talking with my friend Kat, who I met over this podcast, and we've
Mm.
become such good friends so fast. And she's like, "Oh, if I'd only known you before, you would have been in my wedding," but she's going to be in my wedding.
I love
And I love her so much. And we were talking, and she was like, "So who's gonna be your maid of honor? Who's gonna be your bridesmaid? Blah 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 blah." And I started crying because I was like, I I don't have anybody. I don't
it.
know.
I relate to this a lot too. It's funny, and I think what kind of compounds things for me, and sometimes makes it very hard for me to separate. My father died when I was very young, so I was 3. My father passed away, and my mom is she's like an attractive lady, and men tend to want to take care of her. So my mom could kind of live a life where somebody was always really taking good care of my mom. And so she kind of was in this relationship that she thought would, she could just kind of be she would keep me at home and teach me, and she kind of thought she'd be kind of a stay-at-home wife. And that really got knocked on its head when my father got diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis, and so it kind of completely changed everything. He eventually died of a heart attack. But I think because my mom and I were also trauma bonded, there's compounding factors. We're trauma bonded because my father died, and then it's kind of her left with a child that she never thought she would have to raise on her own, and she had to kind of come to terms with that. So for her, what that looked like, a person who had dropped out of college now has to go to community college to become a nurse. The responsibility factor kind of heated up to another level. And so, I think my mom, in a lot of ways, and it's funny because, this narcissism it's like there's so many layers, because I don't think it makes somebody always a terrible person if you set the right boundaries and you're able to have the right relationship with them. I think once you realize this person has this, you're kind of like, okay, let me set these boundaries in place so that I can like live my own life, live for myself too, not feel so gaslit and so guilty all the time. And I think when you put them up, they're good. But I think what happened with my mom and I is like, because all these things got mixed together, I also found myself growing up with very few friends. Today I have more when I went off to college and stuff like that, but and was away from my mom. All my great friends I actually made since I've not been anywhere near like my mom. And when I'm home now because she has some health issues, it's really hard for me to kind of make friends. There's a lot of like, I think as people get closer to me, depending on how much they like her, there's kind of like a different inference layer that she puts on it. And again, because I haven't really noticed this until now, I wasn't even noticing how it was obstructing some of my relationships that I had with people. So it's very interesting how those common experiences, yeah, it's funny.
I mean, yeah, yeah, 100%. So for friendships, for me as a kid, my mom was also a hoarder. So you're like, it's the layers, right? My mother was very much a hoarder, and she never cooked or cleaned. It was like, on when I say never, I mean the rarest of occasions, like maybe a holiday, she would make something, but it was always a big deal if she made something. She made it into like the biggest deal, like she was the best mother ever. But she didn't really cook or clean or do anything. And she would constantly blame us kids. I remember when I was 6 years old, she had just had my youngest brother. I'm the oldest of three. She had just had my youngest brother, and me and my middle brother had not been fed in 2 days. And I kept asking her, I was like, "Hey, I'm hungry." And she locked herself and my new baby brother in her room. And I don't know where my dad was, but he wasn't there. I think he was on a business trip of some kind. But she hadn't fed us, and she screamed at me, "Feed yourself."
Mm.
And 6 years old with my 4-year-old brother, it was like I didn't know what to do. So me and my little brother walked 2 miles to our grandparents' house and stayed with our grandparents for a good long while because she just decided not to take care of us. And with her constantly, you know, staying in her room, she would stay locked in her room. She put like bolts on her door, not for safety for herself, just so her kids couldn't get into the room. Because me and my brothers learned how to lockpick
Mm.
really quickly because we were trying to gain access to our mother. And so she got bolts on her door so that we couldn't get to her. So I have like pretty severe narcissistic abuse. But yeah, because the house was always a mess, and she'd be like, "Oh, well, clean it yourself, freaking kid." Because the house was always a mess, I was never allowed to have friends over except for like the birthday parties, which were a huge deal to me because it was when I could see other kids outside of school. And I don't know. She was such a hoarder that my dad bought a barn, like a 4-horse barn to put some of her stuff in. And then they bought a shipping container, like one that's on the back of a semi truck that was in our backyard. So we
Oh,
had like, yeah, yeah, it was
wow.
intense, intense. And I was always, always blamed for the house not being clean. She was like, well, clean it yourself. If you see something that should be done and it's not being done, then that's a sin. That's a Bible verse. So she would use that Bible verse against little me all the time. And so I developed pretty severe, like obsessive cleaning. I don't have OCD, but I have like a compulsion to clean anything that I think is like dirty, or if something is not in the right place, I get really anxious. And if I can't fix it, I start to have panic attacks now because of it.
Oh my God. It's insane how these things have these like layered effects and impacts on us over time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And for those of you guys listening that don't know what narcissistic abuse, we're going to get into like the different types, but just like a general overview. Some examples of narcissistic abuse include withholding, emotional blackmail, insults, malicious gossip, sabotage, and accusations. And narcissistic abuse usually follows a distinct 3-cycle stage. So you got the idealization phase, the devaluation phase, and then the discarding phase. And it's a cyclical pattern. And with the idealization phase, it's like love bombing. Like this, we're talking about mothers. So this is my precious child that can do no wrong. Look at all of my child's accomplishments. My child is like the best ever. I'm such a good mom. You know, how much I've devoted to this child. This child is amazing. And then the devaluation, say, the child gets a not so great grade and the mom is like really upset. It switches from adoration to criticism. Like it's marked by emotional withdrawal, gaslighting, demeaning behaviors like you're stupid. Like we studied this. You should have known. You should have known. You should have known that that question was A and it wasn't B. And it really undermines like self-esteem and reality in general, and it leads to a lot of confusion and self-doubt. And then the discarding phase and the final stage, the narcissist like abruptly ends the relationship, sometimes to the extreme of parents disowning their children like completely. And I've gone through that, or like the discarding of just being like, oh, well, you're stupid, so I'm not even going to pay attention to you. And if they have multiple children, they'll start focusing or idealizing another child versus the child that they've been discarding.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that like it's all new to me, these kind of cycles, but as you kind of, mention as you walk through those, it just sounds like exactly what I deal with. It goes like in my situation, it goes very much like, oh, my son got me this beautiful home. Oh my God, I love my house. Oh my God, I want to live here so bad. Oh my God, I live in a country club. Oh my God, I live next to celebrities. Oh my God, my son is amazing. We go out to the store. Oh my God, my son got me, like, we go into our country club. Oh, then it's like, this kind of like any little thing might throw it off. Maybe she wanted this, but I did that, or I didn't do something she really wanted, or I'm dating somebody she doesn't want me to date, or I'm not living up to whatever it is that for her she wants, and so then it's why I hate the house. Oh my God, I want to leave here. I want to move out. Why do you're manipulating me by bringing me to some place I can't afford by myself? Why would you have me live here? Meanwhile, you like sold your house, went house hunting with me, got so excited, we were popping Dom Perignon, like when we moved into the house and the whole thing. Then it's like, for me, I think discarding it looks a lot like, I resonated a lot when you described your mom as kind of barricading herself in the room. It's not physical bolts in my situation, but like becoming really reclusive and kind of like using their presence as which you've grown to be very dependent on, because this is kind of like a core functionality of how narcissism this whole thing works, right? So then it's like using the oh, well, I won't go, or like I'll say, oh well, let's go grab food, or let's go do something. Oh, well, I don't want to do anything now, and it's just like a pattern that lasts for a while until it gets back into the hype cycle. And so it's funny because I think people think about, when people will hear this, some people might think about it as like very firm lines in the sand drawn with the like discarding phase, but it can also look like manipulation in other ways to kind of incite you to draw closer. Oh, my mom keeps not talking to me, so maybe I'll pick up the phone and I'll be like, I'll go beyond what my boundaries are. Like I'll violate my own boundaries so that I can. And in my situation, I feel like that's what happens a lot. I mean, even today, like in the present day, I think what we've done with my mom is like we kind of stopped. I kind of took a little bit of a hiatus from TikTok. I was like on TikTok pretty consistently with her doing stuff. And then she kind of was, she loved it at first. Like, oh my God, let's get on TikTok, because she thought people would agree with her because people in her own life kind of support this behavior. But then when she sees the backlash, it's kind of like this thing that we were doing and kind of starting to unpack our issues and going to therapy and doing the, well, now I don't want to go to therapy. Now the therapist is the problem. Now this is the problem. And so it's like, yeah, it's interesting because I think people think that it has to be, I think in these situations, people can see this kind of continuum of what this can look like, because it can go very far, but also these other forms that hit these cycles are the same thing, you know?
Exactly. Oh my God, exactly. And you're like, oh, therapy, dude. Okay. When I was 16, so I'm the oldest of three. I will call him N and J.
Hmm?
So N and my mother are practically the same person personality wise, not
Mhm.
not narcissism wise,
That's
but
right.
the way that they interact with other people in general is the same. And so they
Mhm.
constantly butt heads all the time because they're both very, very stubborn and they both think that they're right all the time. And it's very hard for them to be proven wrong. It
Mhm.
hurts both of their egos pretty bad. And N has some issues with a diagnosis that I won't get into, but it causes a lot of, when you're young, causes a lot of behavioral problems. I love my siblings with all my heart. I would legitimately die for them. And when N was about 12, my mom decided that she didn't want him at all, that he wasn't her son. He was a demon sent to torment her. And she would have screaming matches with him as he was 12 years old, just screaming in his face how she hated him, how she wished he would die, blah, 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 blah. And then she would go off into her room. And then the next day she'd act like nothing was wrong, like nothing happened. And so it got so bad to the point how I was talking about like earlier, how me and N, when we were little, walked 2 miles to our grandmother's house. Well, our Mimi and Papa, who are both from Jamaica, decided that they were gonna adopt essentially N and have him stay with them for the rest of his life, which he is. He's still there. And it was pretty intense. And my dad, who I love my dad very much, he's passed on now. My dad really loved all of his children equally, and that was a huge point of contention in their marriage. They stayed married until he died, but that was a huge point of contention. He was like, I would like all of my children under the same roof. I don't know why you are constantly fighting with our son, but she got her way all the time. And if she wasn't going to get her way, she would just leave. She would literally just leave, and we didn't know where she went. She would leave her phone, her wallet, everything. She would just take her car and go. She'd be gone for a long time. But he didn't want her to leave, and he was going to do everything in his power to keep her, which, whatever, dude. I never understood it. But he convinced her by the time N was 14 that N should be in therapy and that N and my mother should also be in therapy together, but those be separate things. And so for about a year, N was in therapy and he learned a lot of really good coping strategies. And my mother went to like a therapy session with him once a month to try and figure out their issues. And the therapist was like, I would like to see all five of you in a room together to figure out your general family dynamic, right? Because what I'm hearing doesn't click. What my mother was telling her didn't click with what Nick's telling her. So she was like, maybe let's have them all together in one room, right? That was the most chaotic thing. I remember it so vividly. I could close my eyes. It was, oh, she was such a great therapist. She was a Black woman with the most beautiful curls. Oh my God. Like, I thought she was an angel sent to like save my family. I legitimately thought that. I was 16. That's what I was hoping and legitimately praying for. I was like, this woman is going to save my family and I'm going to get my brother back. I so desperately wanted my little brother back, no matter how much he tormented me, because that's what brothers do. I just wanted my brother back. And so I remember us being in the room, and my mom was doing all the talking for a while. And so I was just sitting there with my legs crossed, my feet on the ground, and my hands palms down on my legs, just very, very proper. And the therapist was like, why are you sitting like that? And I got very self-conscious. I was like, oh, am I sitting wrong? So I even straightened up even more. And she was like, no, honey, like, why are you sitting so like properly? And I said, well, my mother wants to make a good impression. And she was like, okay, well, what do you want? And I said, I just want to fix my family. I don't know what I did wrong for us to be in this position. I just want my brother back. And she was like, well, what do you do on your day to day? I say, well, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I clean my room. And then I grab all of the laundry out of the bathroom, all the laundry out of Jay's room, and all the laundry out of mom and dad's room. And I start sorting them. And then I start a load. And then I take the dogs out. And she was like, okay, stop. Why are you doing everybody's laundry? It's like, because it's my job. It's just like, how old are you? 16. That's a lot of responsibility for a 16-year-old. And so we just kept talking. And the therapist was like, so essentially, you're the caregiver of your family. And that made my mother livid. I had never seen my mom so angry viscerally in public before. And so I was genuinely terrified, like terrified for my own safety. And on the car ride back, my mom was like cursing out the therapist, saying that we would never go back, that N was never going to get therapy from her again, that she was never going to go, that it was a waste of money, a waste of time, a waste of resources. She's like, I can't believe we drove here, even though she didn't drive. My dad was driving. So my dad was just staying silent the entire time. And we dropped N off at our Mimi and Papa's. And then my mom just got crueler and crueler and crueler to me to the point where I tried to commit suicide. And then when I tried and the police were called from some of my friends, because I sent a goodbye message to all of them. I'm so glad that they called the police, by the way. They called the police, and my mom was like, well, you're an evil daughter and I don't want you. And you're just doing this to hurt me. So you're going to stay with your Mimi and Papa with your brother. And so I did. And that was like one of the biggest discards that she did of me because I was just so depressed and so sad. Oh, I was so sad and there was nothing I could do.
What do you have a relationship with your mom or now? Like, how, what is that like?
Oh my God. So, real quick, my dad was hit by a car in 2020 in our front yard. And this was during COVID. And this was 3 days before my birthday, before I turned 20. And because it was during COVID, she was the only one allowed to visit him in the hospital. And he suffered from a very traumatic brain injury and broke nearly every bone in his body. Um, Once she was in the hospital with him, after a week of being in the hospital, she decided to take all of her children, 3 children, off of the car insurance, the health insurance, the phone plan, and the iCloud, like off of everything. She went to extreme measures to take us to say that she has no responsibility for us. And so it was left to me. She was like, "Oh, I'll pay you back, Grace, but I need to devote all my time and my money and my resources to my husband. And I can't take care of all of you." And she was like, "Well, you're in college, so I want you to go move in your brother with you to college and I'll pay you back." She kept telling me all the time that I'll pay you back, I'll pay you back, I'll pay you back. She hasn't paid me back a single dime. And I've spent hundreds of thousands of my own money and I'm in debt as fuck. Anyway, so yeah. Um, my dad soon passed away, and I only got to see him in the hospital soon, I say a year. A year later, I only got to see him in the hospital like a handful of times because she kept saying that she should be his person in the hospital, that if he ever got better, he would want to see her, essentially, which is crazy. And he died. And once he died, she refused to go to his funeral. She kept postponing his funeral for over a month. And so my family, my dad's family, decided we're going to put on the funeral because we need to grieve. And she refused to go. And so I was dating my now fiance at the time. And we had only been dating for like a month. And my now fiance was like, "Okay, well, I'm going to take you to the funeral with me." He picked me up at my mom's house and it was so intense. Like when he brought me back to the house from the funeral, the amount of like screaming, he could hear it from outside. And so he came back inside and he was like, "No, you're not going to be here. You just lost your daddy. You're going to move in with me for a little bit." And so he packed up all of my stuff and I moved in with him, but I never left his place,
Well,
essentially, because I he did not think I was safe. He thought I was going to get murdered by my mom. He really did. It was that like level of screaming. He thought I was going to get murdered. And so, yeah, since then, my mom, I guess 2 months after my dad died, started dating a man who's 30. So like your age, and I'm 23. So he was like maybe younger than 10 when I was born, and now they're married. So I haven't spoken to her since it's been almost 2 years now, since 2022. And yeah, I don't have contact with her. My brother N does not have contact with her. He hates her. And then my youngest brother, Jay, does have contact with her, but only because she's paying for his college. And he's afraid that if he cuts off contact, that she won't pay for his college. But yeah, I don't talk to her because,
that sounds like an amazing thing for you. That sounds like the right step.
yeah. Oh, the
That
amount of
sounds
like relief. Oh, yeah. I feel
sounds
like
like
light as a bird, light as a bird.
definitely the right step. Definitely.
Yeah. Because I'm more on the extreme end of the spectrum of narcissistic abuse. And narcissism is like a spectrum. Everybody has a little bit of narcissistic tendencies, especially when you're young. But as you grow up, you're supposed to really grow out of those narcissistic tendencies and start to have empathy for others. And it's almost like people with narcissism are stunted in a
Yeah.
way, emotionally, developmentally, to where they think they're the most important. And it's such a deep rooted insecurity that if someone gets more attention than them, it's like the scarcity mindset. If someone gets more of this from them, then they're not going to be taken care of or provided for.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. Wow.
I know it's like a oh my God. Because I know that was like a lot of information all at once, but I've told this, essentially like so many times. I've been to a lot of therapy to deal with the mother wound because having a mother wound is so deep and entrenched in you because really, our society is built on how women are raising us. Like women are really the caretakers, the care providers, the caregivers. And, you know, as my dad did the best that he could to fulfill that role, but he was also working all the time because he owned like three companies. So he was always doing it. He was
Yeah.
always moving, doing the best he could because she would spend his money like random sprees. I remember I was in college before the accident happened. I was texting my dad and I was like, "Hey dad, can you send me some money for gas?" Because he would occasionally just send me money because he would tell me that school was my job and that I couldn't get a job until I graduated. And so he's like, if you ever need money, just ask me. And so I was like, Dad, can I have money for gas? And he's like, okay, how much is that? And I showed him like my tank and I said, oh, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, give me a second. And then he goes into his bank and she has taken out $147,000 out of his bank account. Like just took everything out of his bank account, everything. And, he had his business bank accounts and stuff like that. So she didn't have access to that. But that's a lot of money just
Yeah,
to
this
take
not
out.
just a small little thing. Yeah, that's crazy. That's a lot.
It's a lot of money. It was insane. And he was like, give me a second. So I was waiting at the gas station with my little self in college. And so I called like one of my guy friends and I was like, can you come give me gas, please? And he did. So I got back to my dorm and I was like calling my dad. He wasn't answering. So I like hit the FaceTime button. And I guess he answered on accident because it was black and it was probably in his pocket. And he's talking to my mom and he's like, what did you, why, what? He just kept me, what, why? And she was like, well, I took out the money to pay for Grace's college and then pay for Nay's college and pay for Jay's college. And he's like, well, Nay and Jay are not in college. What are you talking about? And she was like, well, you know, I set it aside so that it can accrue. And he's like, accrue, accrue what? Where did you put the money? And she's like, that's really none of your concern. And he was like, okay, I'm not gonna deal with you. So I hung up because I was with a group of friends and I was
Um,
like, oh my God, I just got like the most tea ever. And eventually my dad did tell me that he was like, can you go to the bursar's office and see if your mom put any money towards your college? No, she didn't. She never did. To this day, I graduated in 2022. She has never ever sent Texas Tech money for me or for Nay, like she said she did. So I don't know what she did with that money. I don't
oh
know.
my God. That is insane.
It is insane. Like when a young person experiences narcissistic abuse, it leaves like a psychological damage on them for a long time. And you're talking about how you're 29 and you're finally, it's like something within you is like awakening to be like, wait, hold up. This is it. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's not.
Why? Go ahead.
No, no, that's right. Yeah, it's like you wake up and you're kind of like things aren't clicking and you start making these realizations. And I think also you're taught to keep your at home life like very focused on at home. And also because I went so deep on the career side, I mean, I haven't lived at home. I graduated high school, went to college, and I haven't been living with my mom like over 10 years. It's been a long time. So more than 10, it's been like 12 years. It's been a long time. So from my perspective, it's like you just kind of leave home behind and you never really think about it again. And you never think to bring it up because my conversations with my mom were just, on the phone. You can have, to your point, these relationships don't always look as bad as they sound, when you kind of synthesize what's going on. So day to day, hey mom, what's up? Oh, I'm just at work. Yeah, what's up? It's just normal. And then I think not until I really came back into the same space because my mom started having health issues and I kind of came back home to help out with that. Um, that's when you kind of see it again because you're actually back living with it. And yeah, and so you just don't have the language and you are just trying to figure things out, but you start to talk to your friends about it because it's a different day and age. Now you have a different, I just had friends from school and we weren't really talking about this kind of stuff when I was a kid, but now that I have adult friends and I come back home, we're talking about life and um you start to do a little bit of comparison about the way you're living and things that you're going through versus others and you start to realize, wow, this is not normal.
Yeah. It's not normal. It isn't normal. And it shouldn't be anyone's normal. Like symptoms from narcissistic abuse towards the victims are anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and a loss of sense and self-worth. Like you may also experience really like crazy physical symptoms such as like migraines and stomach aches and full-on body aches. Like I started developing seizures, like
Um,
real seizures whenever I would get panicked by my mother, whenever I'd get yelled at. And the body keeps the score. It's your body telling you that there's something going on, there's something wrong. And whenever I like, because I haven't seen my mom in a long time, and since she got married, I guess in December, so recently, she got engaged in September and she got married in December. It was crazy, and none of her kids knew that she got engaged in the first place until she showed up in Lubbock, where both of my siblings are, and their girlfriends. And she was like, "Oh, I'm going to take you guys to like the fanciest restaurant ever in Lubbock, like the most expensive restaurant." And they're like, "Where are you?" They told me, they're like, "Where are you getting this money? Like, where are you getting this money?" So my brother, he was like, "Yeah, she showed up with the most big gaudy ring on her finger." And so I knew immediately that she was engaged. And she kept flashing it. Like she would hold her cup just so
Oh,
and do like stuff like this. He was demonstrating it for me because I wasn't there. So this is all hearsay, but I know it happened.
man.
And she would be like, I don't know, touching my siblings on the arms or whatever. I don't know, with her ring. And my brother, the middle one, flat out asked her, he's like, "Are you engaged?" And she was like, "Next question." And he's like, "No, are you engaged?" And she was like, "Yes." And he's like, "I don't think that's a good idea." And then she started to get angry at him, very mad, very upset, very infuriated. And so she essentially left them with the check, and it was like $500 or something.
My
And then,
God.
yeah, them,
This is crazy.
yeah,
That's
she
like
got her.
so crazy.
I know my life could be a TV show.
This sounds like
Oh
a TV
my God.
show. This is like insane.
It's real. And so they had to call my uncles, my dad's older brothers, to be like, "Can you please send us money? I don't want to become a dishwasher. Please send us money." So then immediately my brother calls me and he's like, "Do you want to know something crazy?" And I was like, "Dude, I had a prophetic dream last night that mom was engaged." And he was like, "You're lying. She told you." And I was like, "No, I'm not lying. I had a dream." And he was like, "Well, she is engaged." And I was like, I screamed, "Joey!" And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "What did I dream last night?" And like, "What did she dream?" So she dreamed that your mother was engaged. And or Nay was like, "What the hell?" And yeah, and when she got married on the anniversary of my dad's funeral, which is even more crazy. Like
Oh,
that's not a coincidence. That's not a mistake. Like the funeral that you were boycotting, you get married to your new third husband on, which I didn't even know that she was married before. I'd
you
never
need to make a
known.
Reese's Pieces style on TikTok. You need to have like you. Who the f is my mom? That sounds insane. I am. Woo.
I know I should. I really should.
You really should. You
But
really should. 50 parts.
yeah. Exactly. Oh my God. I don't know. I really should, but yeah, it was so insane. It was so intense. And like when we were celebrating, my dad's funeral again, because that's something that I do is I remember dates very well. And my brother's girlfriend texted me and she's like, "Did you get the text from your mom?" And I was like, "No, I blocked that bitch. What text message?" And she was like, she sent me a picture of my brother's phone, and it's just this long ass text message basically saying, it's like, "I never knew why God intended for me to marry your father and have all you lovely children. And I don't understand why you've cut me out of your life, but I need to move forward with my life. And my husband is going to love me. And my grief journey is far from over, but he's going to love me and walk me through it and be with me all the rest of my days." And then she sent like a selfie of her and her new husband. But here's the kicker. She got married in the same place she got married to my dad. She got
That's really,
remarried.
I'm sorry. That sounds crazy. That's really hard. That's, wow.
Because what's even worse is it's the Arboretum in Dallas. We would go there every year on my parents' anniversary to take a family photo every single year. So I knew immediately where they were. I knew immediately, like immediate, and that was really like, huh. So we're just props to you. We're not, you don't care about us as people, as individuals. We're just props.
Mm.
And that was that sinking feeling of like, okay, all right. And what was even crazier is Joey had told my brothers that he was going to propose to me, that month. And so she decided to get married on that month to kind of beat me essentially to, I don't even know. I don't even know. That's why my brothers and my fiance think that she got married and engaged so soon, was to essentially beat me at getting engaged and stuff like that, or to try and be better than me. And I don't know. I mean, from what I've been told, because I haven't seen her or anything like that, but from what I've been told by my siblings, they're like, well, yeah, she essentially just wants to be better than you. So my whole life was in constant competition. I didn't even know it was a competition, but she was always in constant competition with me as her child. And I think that's a really big thing for narcissistic mothers towards their daughters. I don't know if it's a thing towards their sons. Do you think it is?
No, I don't think so. I think that is a uniquely mom thing. But my mom had that experience with her mom in a lot of ways.
Mm,
So I resonate a lot with that concept because she would talk about that a lot with her mom.
mm. I feel like they really idolize the sons as like, oh, my son is going to take care of me. Oh, my son is like the best thing ever. And they really devalue the daughters. At least that's what's been my experience. Like, she would really oscillate between my brothers, even the one that she discarded constantly, of being like, oh, my son is just so great. And my son is going to take care of me when I'm old. And she would have these weird talks when my youngest brother was 5, and say that this golden baby, which he has golden curls. He was her golden child. He is her golden child. She would prop him up like one hand and then supporting his head, like even as like a 5-year-old. And this is my golden baby, and this is the baby that will take care of me when I'm old and not put me in a nursing home. She would say that all the time, that like Jay would not put her in a nursing home. So it's like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? That in my brain, that means that she knew that she was mistreating us. And maybe it was like, you know, under something. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it's something that you just know, and so you're trying to like get. That's definitely an admission that you know that what you're doing is not right. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So this podcast purpose is to identify trauma and how we can help heal ourselves and
Yes.
heal others. And the saying of the podcast is, trauma is not who you are, it's what you go through. Because when we go through these very traumatic experiences, it's almost like it becomes our identity for a little bit. Does that ever resonate with you?
Yeah, a lot, definitely. And I think the more that I publicly discuss this to the point where you go outside, because and people start recognizing you for these kinds of stories, the more it becomes your identity. And I think, I also own a company and do a lot of other things. And I feel like, yeah, it's like it can come to define you, especially the more you talk about it in like a public way. And you don't always want to go outside and be the person with the narcissistic parent. My mom's a master manipulator is one of these like one of the most popular videos. And it's like you don't want to like I don't want to go outside and instantly be like pegged as this thing. And yeah, it's you're so much more, and there's also so much more to your story. Again, when you start sharing things publicly, there are bits and pieces, and it's chopped up, and people kind of like take what they want from it. And yeah, I definitely identify with that. It's like it's a part of me. It's not the whole of me. It shapes a lot of who I am, and so I have to acknowledge that it's a part of me and like accept that, and also figure out ways that I push that back into the world. I haven't always been the best romantic partner. I'm sure that's why I'm single today. I want to be married. But I had to do a lot of work on myself because I started to realize like there are some of those behaviors that I project in relationships, right? So you also have to avoid becoming this person that you're so attached to, right? So there's just so much to it. It's like it's very complex because you can start enacting some similar behaviors even without being a narcissist yourself, because it's what you're this for me, it's my core relationship in life. It's the longest relationship I've ever had. It's the most, it's this person's been there since the day I was born all the way to now, the only person who has been there from day one to today. And so it's like you can learn a lot of bad things from these relationships that you project into other relationships in your life, with friendships, and especially I noticed with myself in romantic relationships for sure. And I think also to your point, the kind of undercurrent in the story, you're like that narrative is like your father also was there, and your father saw this happening too. And I think like similarly, my mom has been in different relationships throughout my life, and people will sit there, they'll sit there and kind of endure that. And it's like you can start to think, well, maybe that's what a relationship is like. I'm going to do all these things, and this person's just going to kind of sit there and just deal with whatever I'm doing, because this is very unhealthy tropes that I have like taken and pushed into relationships that I've had to unpack and unlearn. So totally resonate with that. You want to separate from it, but it's also like formed you, right?
Yeah. What do you think of the saying, I transmute my pain into purpose?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that because I feel like for me, all of this has taken on a form of like me actively trying to do new things in the world and be pioneering. I think for me, it's like that's what it's come as. I think more recently, it's also purpose, as in sharing really openly, even though I'm naturally a very introverted person, so that other people can also recognize that like they're not alone in these stories. Like the amount of people I see in these comments that have the same story or some version of it or crazier story. I mean, they're just like, I'm just like, oh my God, it's like so many people. So, you know, you have to, I don't think you have to do anything. I think what I've taken it as is like, by taking this pain and suffering and trauma and stuff that I've experienced and like pushing it back into the world as something that I will take on as a part of my identity, even though it's really hard, but I do think it really does help other people. And a lot of people don't feel comfortable sharing their stories and like still go through these things in silence. So unsilencing that, giving it light, and also making it comfortable for people to understand like this thing may be considered taboo and talking about it may be considered taboo, but like your pain deserves light, and the only way you can really heal is with air. So yeah, that resonates with me a lot.
Yeah. The only way that we can heal is to acknowledge we've been hurt. If you get stabbed, your wound is not going to heal if the knife is still in it.
No, no.
If anything, it'll grow around the knife and make it worse and make it a lot harder for you to remove it, to remove the pain, to remove what is causing you anguish. And, a lot of people, whenever they hear that someone's dealing with a narcissist, they're like, oh, cut them out of your life, cut them out, like cut them out. But it's very different when it's your mother. It's so different when it's your mother. It's so different when it's someone that raised you, that said they loved you or did things in their power to provide for you, to take care of you. I'm such an extreme example that I tried so hard over and over and over to just get my mom to love me, to see me, to be there for me. I begged her, I cried, I'd call her all the time, just asking her, why don't you just love me? Why don't
Mm,
you care? And it got so bad to the point where like she discarded me. She threw me away. And she tries to spin it as if I'm the one not talking to her. And my fiance has told me, he's like, okay, like maybe one day that she'll have this awakening and she'll recognize what she's done and she'll apologize. But until she apologizes, I'm not gonna let her hurt you anymore. So
yeah.
we're gonna keep our distance. If she's in the hospital, if she needs something, we'll be there because that's the type of people that we are. But for now, you have to heal, and you can't heal in the place that makes you sick.
Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
have to remove yourself. But for a lot of people, there's no way that they could remove themselves, and they shouldn't. And I really appreciate, your series because yeah, it's fun to hear the stories and whatever and see your mama's reactions, but you are trying so hard to heal that relationship with your mom because you love her, because that's the longest relationship you've had, and you want what's best for her. And it's so hard to speak truth to someone who is essentially delusional. You have to be so incredibly delusional to hurt someone else, to abuse someone else.
Yeah, and I'll also say you hit on so many great points and themes there, and I think the other thing is that people thrive off, can thrive off of that cycle of you coming back begging for love. So I think what I've also kind of realized with my mom is like I have to accept that the person who hurt you is not going to be your healer. It's something that you have to kind of heal yourself. Easier said than done. But I think the more that I kind of like also escape that cycle of, you know, and like making her feel grand again or like that her presence is necessary, the more that she started to realize like, I love you, but I also can be okay with with me not fulfilling your every expectation of what you hope that I can be. And I think when she started to accept that that's the case and that boundary was set, that like just because you're upset now and you're in this kind of discarding cycle, it's not going to move me. I don't like love you, but I don't care about that. That's delusional and calling. And she'll be like, "You're so terrible. Why would you?" And I just like it just kind of doesn't phase me. And I think she's starting to realize so much that it doesn't, that now she's also starting to adapt, but it's so hard. And to your point about when it's not always so easy when it's such a core relationship to really cut it off. Absolutely. I think it also when your parents start to have these health issues and they're getting older. And at the end of the day, I think the key thing in forms of very extreme narcissistic abuse, I think there's no option but to cut the person. I mean, it's so intense. Like you can't have any psychological safety. I think in situations like mine, which are extreme too, but benefit from boundaries. Like a very firm boundary setting helps to draw a clear line in the sand with that as well. And in my experience, very recent experience so far, by like allowing my mom to not be able to hurt me because I'm like, you're delusional with what you're saying, and I'm no longer going to be manipulated into this emotional toxic cycle with you anymore. I'm not going to care. Sometimes I would put my mom's emotions so ahead of my own that I would even think as a first thought before I even think about how something would affect me, how it's going to affect my mom. I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, I didn't realize it was crazy, but then when I started, I'm like, this is actually insane. So it's like you can't unsee that, and when you just start putting a firm boundary, like I'm going to sell the house now. My mom literally would sit around and tell me she can't wait to get out of the house. Why am I here? Why am I here? You did this to manipulate me. You bought this house so that I would be dependent on you. You did all these things. Okay, so let's leave. Now that I'm like, let's leave. Well, Dakotah, do you really want to leave? Dakotah, why do we have to sell the house? Where are you going to put me once you sell the house? I don't engage. But it's insane. It's actually insane. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like when you have a narcissistic parent and they're getting older, it's almost as if they infantilize themselves. Not, you're not doing it for them. You're not doing it to them. They infantilize themselves. And I've seen it with my own mom, especially towards my brothers, of being like, oh, I need you to take care of me. Your dad is dead. Like, I need you. I need you. I need you. And then she married a much younger man. And so my brother, who he doesn't talk to her anymore, he was like, well, you have a new husband, so you proved to me that my father was completely replaceable. And my entire life, you've shown me that I was discarded, discarded. I was garbage to you. Like I was just only around whenever you needed someone to show off because I'm really good at tennis and you wanted somebody to brag about, but you have a new husband, you're his problem. He's your problem. Y'all got to figure that out on your own. And same for me. If she ever came to me and was like, oh, I need you to do this, that, and the other thing, or oh, I need money. I haven't even gotten into how much money she's stolen from me, specifically me. I'd be like, well, you got a young man who's fully capable of working, and you are as well. You are as well. You are not crippled in any way, shape, or form. So you can make your own money. You can do it. Yeah, I believe in you. Go ahead.
You got it.
You got it. You got it. And the only time I saw her like against my will, because I didn't know she would be there, but it was my youngest brother's birthday party. And every single year since he was, able to shoot a paintball gun, our dad would take all of us and put us in camo gear and take all our cousins and we would go shoot paintballs at each other. It was the most fun. And my youngest brother, I'm so proud of him. He created a boundary. He was like, yeah, you're not allowed to bring your husband.
Mm.
No, he can't come. This is our safe place. He can't come. And she got very angry and sent like a group text saying that her new husband is her permanent plus one. And if he can't be there, then she won't be there. And so I thought she wouldn't be there, right? My mistake. She showed up, and the first thing out of her freaking mouth was to my fiance when he was like, "Oh, how are you doing? How are you doing?" She was like, "I don't know if I'll ever work again." And he's like, "That's a weird thing to say." He literally said that. He's like, "That's a weird thing to say." And she's like, yeah, I've been so depressed and just so sad. And whenever I look at the companies that I started with my husband, he's like, which husband? And I was just so good. I was like, I was living. I was living.
That is really good. That is
I
really
had
good.
to walk away. I had to walk away. But essentially, she was like, I can't run those companies anymore without him. And so Joey was like, okay, then don't start a new one. And then he just walked away. And I was like, boom,
There you
boom.
go. Mic
So
drop.
good. That was so good. I'm so proud of him. He's so sassy. I love it.
I love
But yeah, like you can't give in to the woe is me of anyone with narcissistic tendencies because that's what they feed on. That's their sustenance.
it is. It is. And it takes a while to realize that because you're gaslit into really caring about that all the time. But when you realize that that's actually like a power that you have by not engaging, I think people call it like the gray rock method. Like I've learned
Yeah.
all of these like terms since I've been, but it's like it just really, really, really gives you your power back. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this now. So sometimes I'm just like, she can keep living here. I'll move, because I'm just like at this point I understand how to establish boundaries and have my own power, and it's not taking over my life in the way that it was before, and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah. So your daily routine with your mother has really changed.
Yes, it is super changed. And honestly, I think one of the biggest things is when my mom started getting sick, she started feeling like, I mean, rightfully, I think you do get depressed when at one point we thought my mom would die in 2 to 3 years, and then we realized that it wasn't that. So that was good, but it took us like a 6 month period to figure that out. So we were kind of like, really to feel like you could be on your final days at any point, which is pretty traumatizing for me and for her, a lot for her. So she would spend a lot of time just kind of in her room, kind of depressed. And so I would try to, do stuff. And then she kind of got out of that a little bit once we started realizing that she'd be okay. But the day to day routine with her, luckily the house is pretty large, so we're able to kind of live two different existences in the same space like pretty easily. But I would, I think that like during our peak period of really addressing these issues where they were coming to the surface, especially when we were doing a lot of TikTok, we kind of sit down and start having the conversations every day, and like, oh my God, life would just explode because I think what we're benefiting from now is like we're just not talking about anything. It's easy to just live a life like this when you're not talking about anything. It's only when you start to really get into the hard things, and I think ultimately I don't know if my mom and I will ever be able to have those conversations, really get to the hard things and really heal any of the underlying stuff. So I've had to get comfortable with the idea that I might navigate through life never really feeling like those things are resolved. And I have to ask myself sometimes like, do I really want to go back to that dark place with my mom, day to day? Do I really want to like, it's as good as it will be to heal those things, you know, is it better like this? Maybe we don't ever get to the peak, optimal, most amazing relationship where there's full transparency, understanding, etc. But we can live a pretty good relationship that still leaves everybody at the end of life, when that day does come, feeling like we had a whole functioning and generally healthy relationship by just putting the boundaries in. So I think what people sometimes forget is like healing as a process is actually quite hard. You're gonna have to. People like go to therapy. When people always put in my TikTok like, you need to take off a TikTok and go to therapy. I'm like, whew, therapy is not easy work. It's very hard. And once you leave the therapist's office with this person, you have to deal with the repercussions of that openness. Right? People don't talk about that either. It's like what you described with your mom, like leaving. I've done that with my mom in therapy, and then she's like, "I hate the therapist. I don't." It's just like it doesn't happen instantly. So I had to ask myself the question: is it really that I want to like heal all these things and have the super optimal relationship with my mom? That's kind of the idealistic one, or do I accept the mom that I have more in the childhood I didn't have, and more in the things I would prefer out of this relationship, but establish some boundaries and have a pretty good one? And I think for today, what I've kind of netted to is like live for the pretty good one. That's kind of that's where I've netted out. Live for the pretty good one right now. So we'll see.
Exactly. I appreciate that so very much. That's so good. That's so good. That is so good. Live for the good one right now. Is yeah, the thing that you really have to accept with any type of relationship is you can't change another person. The only thing that you can change is yourself. The only thing you got control over is you. And if that person is not, supporting you, feeding your soul, and not supporting in the way of they're doing everything for you, but they're encouraging you. They want to see you do well. If they just want to be spiteful and see you fucking suffer, then like my mom, that's on them. I'm just not going to suffer in
Now,
your general area. You don't get to see that vulnerable side of me because you're not a safe person. That's what I really had to figure out with my mom from a very young age. And, we talk about like attachment styles, stuff like that. I had a very anxious and avoidant attachment, which that attachment style, like that study, there's like 4 different attachment styles, right? There's the anxiously attached, there's the avoidantly attached, and there's the secure, and then there's like the avoidant, like dismissive.
mhm.
So so within avoidant dismissive and avoidant fearful, I was avoidant fearful. I thought that if I ever shared anything that I was going through with a person, that I was going to get thrown away. I was going to get discarded. It was gonna be used against me. Like my mom was very good at remembering certain things and using it against me. So, like for example, let's say that I liked someone and I'm a bisexual person, but I never opened up to her about being bi until I was out of the house. But let's
Mhm.
just say that I like someone and I told her about it. And she'd be like, "Oh, honey, it's okay. It's okay to have a crush, whatever." And then she would bring it up to my siblings in the most ridiculous, horrible way of being like, "Well, you can't go see your little boyfriend now." And then my siblings would be like, "A boyfriend?" And I'd be like afraid, but "Don't talk about this. Don't talk about this. Don't talk about this." Like, because my little brothers would bully the hell out of me for anything and everything. Like every little thing was ammunition. And she knew that. She knew that I would get bullied by my brothers for liking someone. And I, growing out of the house, I became very dependent upon other people's opinions of me and very afraid if that I did anything like wrong that people would abandon me, and that really attracted more narcissists into my life of being like, oh, this person is easily manipulated, easily able to be controlled, they don't respect themselves, they don't respect their bodily autonomy. I would get into like really like dangerous sexual relationships because I thought that that was a way that I could keep someone. And baby honey, no, that's not. Oh, if I could go back to younger me in college and be like, oh honey, you so desperately want to be loved, but you got to love yourself first, because you wanting to be loved, you're accepting the worst treatment. No, 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 no. I had no self-respect, none whatsoever. And I have a lot more now, like substantially, to the point where I had a friend that I thought she was my friend. I genuinely thought I made this woman, I was up to a pedestal. I cared so much about her. Like, for her birthday's on Christmas, and my fiance proposed to me on Christmas, but I felt so bad because I was like, oh no, we're taking her day. And he's like, it's Christmas. It's Christmas. Come on. This
Oh,
is
that's her day.
I was like, I'm taking her day away from her. And he's like, no, stop. We just got engaged. What are you doing? It's like, because I'd been so conditioned by my mother. Like, I don't know. And so eventually, this girl decides to have, a big birthday thing where we all go on like a vacation. So I was really excited. So my fiance and I spent a lot of money to go with them and their other friends on the vacation, spent a lot of money. And she was like, oh, I'll take your engagement pictures. We paid her a lot of money to take those engagement pictures because we're like, oh, we'll just support you. So we're hemorrhaging money, and we are young people, so we do not
Yeah.
have a lot of money to hemorrhage.
I get what you mean.
And so I thought everything was going to be fine. And then she discarded me. Yeah, she doesn't want anything to do with me anymore. She told me that she had been avoiding me because we got into like a conversation on the trip about medication, and I was just hyping up my medication because I have a antipsychotic and an anti-seizure medication, and I'm so excited to have this medication because it's saving my life. It's helping me in so many different ways. And she just stopped taking whatever medication she was taking cold turkey without talking to her doctor. And that really upset me because I was like, well, you don't know the side effects. Like, something could happen because, my entire life I've been taking these medications that if I didn't, I could get really sick. And I'd been hospitalized several times throughout my childhood. So in my brain, I have a very different relationship with medication versus her just getting on a new medication for mental health issues. She was like, well, I'm going to stop it. And I told her, I was like, I don't think you should. And then we had this whole argument, and she just decided that she didn't want to be my friend anymore because I just didn't agree with her, essentially. We were fine on everything else. She just decided to not be my friend. So she started, distancing herself from me, avoiding all of my calls, telling her boyfriend to avoid all my calls because her boyfriend and my boyfriend, or my fiance, were friends, and he's been avoiding him too. And so I got to the point this week of being like, you know what? She's not invited to anything anymore. I've tried asking her to come over. I've tried asking her to hang out. You know what? I gotta let it go because I have to have self-respect and not pursue someone who doesn't see the value that I bring to the table. She doesn't see the value I bring to the table. All right, then that's it. I'll find somebody else. And literally, like, within me recognizing, I'd be like, okay, I'll just find somebody else. I met a really cool person at the dog park, and now we're really close friends, and we hang out and talk every single day. And she's like the coolest. When I say she's the coolest, like she's such a genuine person that we'd only known each other for like a couple hours because we talked for 4 hours at the dog park.
Oh,
We'd only
wow.
known each other for a couple hours that like the next week I was like, I need help moving. She's like, I got you. And she, after her long shift at work, came and helped us move and stuff and actually cared. And the friend that I had, that girl that I was talking about for a while, she like ghosted me every time I asked for help moving. And she knew I was moving and she just ghosted me. And she posts on Instagram all the time. And the other couple that we went with on her birthday trip, they're pregnant, they're having a baby, and she went, she traveled to go to their baby shower. And I'm like, okay, so that makes sense to me now. If you care more about them than about me, that's okay. You can go on living your life. And you know, you're just not gonna be in mine.
That super
Oh,
resonates too because I think the cycle that you learn of this like toxic core relationship draws you to a lot of other toxic relationships. I felt that too in friendships and relationships. And to that point, I think especially in relationships, because I think also the fact that my dad died, I'm gay, my dad
mm,
died. I feel like I end up in these situations like looking to recreate a nuclear family again. Um, and I think sometimes like accept I feel like sometimes the things that are best for me, like relationships that are really good for me, I like avoid because of this kind of fear. And then the ones that are like these kind of toxic cycles that end up in like discarding, are ones that I'm drawn to because it feels more familiar to what I think there's what I want and what I know is probably good for me. And then there's like what's really familiar for me. So it's definitely something that I resonate with and have been like trying to unpack. I've just recently come into a lot of things, including realizing that that happens for me as a cycle. So I totally resonate with that too.
yeah. Dakota, how can I support you? Just me to you.
Um, I think doing things like this. I mean, I think like having this kind of conversation where we're able to transparently discuss things, trauma dump podcast. There you go. And create. I think continue to create spaces like this where I can continue to tune in, others can continue to tune in, and see that these stories are not you're not crazy. You're not the only one. You're not the only person who deals with XYZ. I think the creating space is like a very important part of it. But this conversation and the space you create, I think, is really important and integral in that. So I appreciate that.
You. Do you
Yeah.
have any resources or recommendations you'd like to share?
There's one that I've started to read. I may butcher the title, but it's like Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. That's a really, really good one for people who kind of deal with things like this. And honestly, I think continuing to consume media like this, I think helps you to understand that you're not alone in these experiences. I think the first step is really just recognizing that you're not alone in these experiences and understanding where there are these kind of like what's not normal so that you can just figure out for yourself what is the right path forward for you. So that's what I say. But I'm also still very new, so I'll be looking to other short resources too. I learn more resources every day.
Yeah, I get that 100% because I do a lot of research for this podcast because I want to provide resources for people because I think they're so important. We need more. There's so few out there, but the ones that I do find, I put them all in the links in the description. But one big resource says to recover from narcissistic abuse, you should try learning about narcissistic behavior and becoming aware of the signs of narcissistic abuse and labeling it is for what it is.
Hmm.
And then find a support group or a network of support and connection with others who have gone through similar experiences. And then lastly, it says talking with a healthcare professional, a counselor, or a therapist can help people recover and change to adapt their behavior so that they don't accept mistreatment anymore. And within yourself, you have to always practice self care, including quality sleep, good nutrition, exercise, and rest. And rest is very different from sleep because we can sleep and not feel rested, right? We can sleep for a long time and not feel rested. Rested is being mindful of your body, the way that you're moving it, and the things that you're taking in. Are they causing you stress? Are there things that you need to, cut out of your life? Or the stuff that you're eating that are giving you more cortisol, which is your stress hormone. There are some foods that, especially meat of animals that have been slaughtered, the meat has cortisol in it. So if you're eating a lot of red meat, especially, um, you can get really stressed out. Even like pig,
Yeah.
get really stressed out. So for me, I noticed that I don't really like the taste of bacon, and it's not because it doesn't taste good. I just, once I stopped eating ham, bacon, stuff like that, dude, I felt so much better. And I did a lot of research of it. And I was like, well, it's because your cortisol levels are really high. And when you're in eating these things, it can also increase your cortisol levels. I'm like, so I'm eating the hormones of the animals that have been murdered. Now, I'm not a vegan, vegetarian, or anything like that, but that was like such an eye-opening like kind of thing for me to be like, hmm.
The food is really important. Diet, and for me, I think a lot of going to the gym, just like starting my day off in the gym, just doing something. I used to do it so much, so it's like I was really overweight when I was a kid, and it was a reaction of trying to like change my body, change my. Now I just feel like it's nice to just go and like lift a weight that's heavier than what I thought I could lift today. Like like for 20 minutes, whatever time I can get in there, it does help me feel a lot better throughout my day. So I definitely resonate with that stuff too, for sure.
I take my dogs on a walk, like part of my self-care, because I have two dogs. I have a puppy who's 5 months old. Her name is Mochi, and she's a blue heeler, and she's the bane of my existence, but I love her so much. And then I have my service dog. Her name is Gigi, and she's a golden retriever. And part of my self-care has been going to the dog park every single morning and playing with my dogs and running with them and moving my body. And it feels so good because, like, number one, the puppy has so much energy, plus she's a high energy dog. So getting out some of that energy so I can come back home and actually work and not have her constantly going like that is the exact sound that she makes whenever she's like trying to get my attention or chewing on my hands. When we get home, she's asleep. I can do work now. But it's just like there's so many different levels to it of like, okay, I'm getting a lot of my adrenaline out. I'm moving my body. I feel so much better. And then I go talk to people at the dog park. I make friends. I have social interaction. It's been so healing for me. And plus Gigi, my old lady baby, she's 7, but I've noticed since we've gone to the dog park every single morning, her health has dramatically improved to the point where people are like, "Is she a puppy?" Like, "No, no, no, she an old lady baby. She an old lady." And they're like, "Whoa, she's so agile. She's so limber." They have like a little obstacle course, and Gigi will jump over the things and run around. And it's just it's so good because Gigi's my soul dog. She's like the only thing I have that my dad gave me. And it's I don't know, it's so good. So find the things that feed your soul, like is what really helps heal us from any form of emotional turmoil, is finding the things that bring life to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Hmm. And for those of you listening, if you are going through a emotionally traumatic experience of any kind, 988 is the suicide and crisis lifeline. You can call or text anytime, day or night. And also, if you are in a domestic abuse situation, which, if your mama's yelling at you, that is considered domestic abuse. The National Domestic Abuse hotline is 1-800-799-7233. That is 1-800-799-SAFE. Or you can text START to 88788. Okay? If you need help, there are resources, there are people who can help you. And if you need to get out of, an abusive situation, there are ways to do it. You are not alone. You do not have to go through it alone, and you are needed in this world. So if you feel so hopeless to the point where you want to end your life, because I've been there, please call 988. Please call 911, or message us on our Discord server. It is completely free. It's completely anonymous. I will talk to you and we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk it through because I would rather you guys stay and figure it out, find the things that you need rather than, you know, just go and the potential for growth is just gone.
Mm.
Because from my experience, I am so glad that I stayed. I am so glad that I have a life again and it's worth living.
Amen. And I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Dakotah, for sharing with us. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'm really, 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 really excited that you've created a space like this. It's very important.
Ah! Okay, cool.
Today's memes of the week from our Discord are over here on YouTube. Let's get into those memes. Just a quick reminder before we part, this podcast seeks to forge a strong community, so please don't hesitate to join our Discord to share with others and get some podcast updates. In the Discord, we have so many different channels of discussion that include more than just trauma. We wish to create a place where you can be heard, so please come join us. You are needed and appreciated, and we'd love to meet you, know you, and support you. And at the end of every episode, we spin that wheel of emotions to learn a new feeling and how it correlates to trauma. Ooh, awful. Okay. Landon, awful, revulsion, detestable. Being emotionally abused by someone else can make you feel very awful about yourself and about the world in general. I know that when I was in the throes of it, when I was like 15, my mom really saw me as competition, which is just so sad. She saw me as competition. She saw me as competition in general. She made me go on these diets, even though I was the skinniest I'd ever been in my life. And I swear to myself that I will never, ever be that skinny again because it was so unhealthy. And I was trying so hard to please her. And I just felt awful about myself that I was never enough. Nothing that I could do was ever enough. No grades, no, not the way that I looked. It was never, ever enough. And within that, as an adult now who has no contact with her, absolutely none, I'm about to get married, about to in a year, getting married. And I don't want her at my wedding because that is a day where I want to feel full of awe in myself. Not awful, but full of joy and kindness and compassion and embracing myself and loving myself. And I know if she was there, I'd feel really revolted, detestable, angry, resentful, and I don't want to feel any of those things. And if you're feeling awful constantly around, one person, there's a reason. Your body is telling you that that person is essentially not for you, that you shouldn't be around that person. Like when I was with my mom, I would get sick to my stomach that I would throw up a lot. And that didn't help me having an eating disorder at all. And now that I'm not around her, I feel a lot better. I really do. And I don't know, maybe someday I'll be able to talk to her again. Who knows? Who knows? I can't tell the future. But currently, I'm in the place where, you know, I'm doing great. I'm doing great without her. And that's okay. That's genuinely okay. Special thanks goes out to all of our Discord users. Thank you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing with all of us on the Discord and asking for support and supporting others. If you'd like to support our podcast, we have a Patreon. Different tiers can get you a bracelet that is a handmade bracelet made by me, Grace, or you can get a sticker like the one on my computer. The links are in the description. We also have a bonfire where you can get custom apparel designed by yours truly. That link is also in the description. Any support helps us out a lot. So if you feel compelled to, please like, share, subscribe, and, comment. Maybe you have an idea for an episode that could change the world. Well, change my world. I would love to have some suggestions for you guys on episodes going forward. I like to have a lot of my episodes be guest led, meaning the guest tells me, a general topic that they wish to discuss, and then I do research over that topic. But, I would like your input as well as the viewer of what works, what doesn't work, what do you see that you're like, I don't want to see more of, or what do you see that you're like, I want to see more of you doing this. I would really appreciate any and all input that you guys have. Remember, you are capable of a fulfilling life in spite of your circumstances and your trauma. May you rise again from the ashes and be filled with peace, hope, love, joy, and understanding. I'll see you guys in the next episode. April, let's go. Our entire lineup for April is all women. And I think our lineup for May is going to be all men. We're going to try something new because usually I have like a couple women, a couple men. Like I try to make sure that they're evenly sprinkled through there. But in the process of me moving, when I'm reaching out to guests to be like, oh, do you guys want to be on the podcast? Only women responded back for a good long while. And then it was just suddenly a lot of dudes like responded. So I guess they didn't check their phones for a while. But I'm excited. I'm excited for April. I'm excited. Today is Easter. If you're watching us on the day that it airs, happy Easter. Happy Easter, guys. If you don't celebrate Easter, happy spring. Happy spring, happy spring vibes. Sorry, I usually edit out my vocal stems like that, but I'm going to leave that one in. You guys have a peaceful and productive day. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Mwah! Goodbye.